Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the final webinar of the 2026 series on emerging berry crops. I'm Stefan Mirsky from UW Extension's Emerging Crops program, and I'll be facilitating this session along with my colleague Ann Cowenstraat. This session is going to be a little different from the previous ones in that instead of having guest presenters, we have a fantastic panel of growers who operate diversified fruit farms in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And grow many of the emerging berries that we've been focusing on throughout this series. Today we've got Bernice Ingvaldson from Honeyberry USA, Cory Secher from Carandale Farm, Aaron Wills from Little Hill Berry Farm, and Mark Villers from Homestead 36 Farms. So we're going to start off with brief introductions from each of them and then move into a question and answer format. Ann and I have prepared some questions to get things started, but we'll take questions from you all as they come up. So if you have a question as we're going along, please put it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll get to you as soon as possible. We really want this to be an interactive session. Yeah, if you have any questions related to crop production, processing, marketing, economics, or really anything else that you're curious about related to emerging berry crops, we welcome you to ask them. So, with that said, I think we can get started. First of all, thank you so much to the growers who made time to be with us today. And starting with you, Bernice, would you mind introducing yourself in just a couple minutes by telling us who you are, where you farm, what you grow, your scale, and your primary markets?
Yes, I'm Bernice with the blue front teeth. Yeah, in the winter we have aronia berries on our baked oatmeal in the morning, and I have some Saskatoon berries I threw in a muffins this noon and in the summertime. So I kind of need to get a better. Anyways, I noticed that this morning that I have my blue front teeth back again, like I do often in the summer months. So yeah, we're located 25 miles north of the headwaters of the Mississippi River and Zone 3. So our mission is to grow as many Zone 3 cold hardy specialty fruits as we can. So we have everything from honeyberries to currants to saskatoons to tart cherries to um, aronia, seaberry, and then all the ribes like the gooseberries, jostaberries. So that's our niche, and we try and stick with what will grow here. And we have 3-4 acres of U pick and an acre of bird pick, but we're addressing that with more netting this year. Always exploring better options for limiting the bird problem. Cedar waxwings come in June, no, yeah, early June, just when the berries are starting to ripen with the honeyberries. They don't bother the later fruits, but yeah, that's the nemesis, the cedar waxwings. So, yeah, otherwise in the winter, well, spring and fall, we ship out plants and have the U-pick in the summer and welcome people to come for U-pick or farm stays and come check it out. Um, and just always looking forward to learning from other growers as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Bernice. Mark, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Great. My name's Mark Villers, Homestead 36 Farms. We're in just south of Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, in Door County. And we started out as a strawberry farm, and I kind of got hooked on the perennial agroforestry type thing. And so we're transitioning into largely honeyberries, blackcurrant, aronia, and elderberry. And for my situation, I guess my long term goal is just to essentially try to scale this so I can do better things for more land. There's a lot of polluting farmers by me, so it would be a better alternative. And so you kind of have to model that to make sure people know what's possible. So yeah, the challenge that we're having is trying to integrate 4 different crops that can scale and hopefully into one product, so it can kind of be diverse out in the field and also diverse in the bag, which is probably good for people's health. So at least that's what we're striving for. As far as the scale, we're currently on about 8 acres, but have access to more acreage. So we're hoping to scale, but we want to do it right. So there's a lot to learn, and there's not a whole lot of research. So we're hoping to really learn the lessons, test out a lot of different cultivars, and make sure that what we're doing is has the most promise that we can. We primarily originally would sell direct to consumer. We're about a half a mile away from a highway that gets about 2 million people with tourist traffic, but they're busy and their schedules change. So us getting into the frozen market as of this year has been really nice. And so we're selling mixed, all of those fruits mixed in a bag to grocery stores now, just like a handful of like smaller health food stores, but it's been a nice transition there. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Aaron, you're next on my screen.
All right. Yeah. So I'm Aaron Wills from Little Hill Berry Farm. We're located in Northfield, Minnesota, Zone 4B, about 45 minutes to an hour south of the Twin Cities. We grow organic berries, so blueberries, day neutral strawberries, raspberries, and then we have kind of smaller plantings of aronia, black and red currants, cherries, like Carmen Jewel, like the Canadian bush cherries, I guess sometimes they're called. And then we're experimenting with the new seedless table grapes from the University of Minnesota. We actually planted them before they were released, so we've had them for a couple of years as kind of a trial site. In terms of like markets, so we do a lot of pick your own. We're really focused on bringing people to our farm. So we do pick for blueberries and raspberries and then currants as well. And then the rest of our fruit we basically sell at our farm store. So almost 100% of our sales are at our farm. In terms of scale, our biggest crop is blueberries. We have 5 acres. So we've been around since 2011. So we started with blueberries and then diversified over time. Uh, and then strawberries. So we grow day neutral strawberries, which are a little bit of a different strawberry than the June bearing that most people are used to. We grow those all in tunnels, and so we have somewhere around an acre to maybe an acre and a half of tunnels devoted to day neutral strawberries. In terms of just like acreage, I think we have about 10 acres under cultivation. And our revenue, which I always think is, I think sometimes we focus a lot on acres, but I think it's also helpful to talk about like revenue in terms of size of your farm. So our revenue is around 375,000, just to kind of give you a sense of how much fruit we're selling and kind of the size of the operation. Um, yeah, I think that should cover it.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Cory, you're next.
Okay, yeah. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, good. I'm out in the country. I don't always get the best reception here, so if I cut off, let me know. My name's Cory Secher. We own Carandale Fruit Farm down here just south of Madison, Wisconsin. We're about 8.5 miles south of Madison. Our primary cash crop is strawberries, and we have anywhere between 12 and 16 acres any given year. Put about 4 acres of new ones in every year, take out some as a rotational deal about every 3 years. Our other crops go into the aronia berry, which I'm trying to develop that one. Big markets down here, trying anyway. We do the Concord and Fredonia grapes. And then we have all that fun stuff that everybody else is doing. We got quince, persimmons, cornelian cherries, seaberry, got the black currants, Saskatoon. We tried buffalo berry. We have a slew of plums, which I now have about an acre, acre and a half of various plums that I'm trying to develop. Hard to grow because they have to have just the right aspect for it with this kind of climate. Um, we have tart cherries and honeyberries. And yeah, we have about probably 60 acres total that's tillable. We're out here in a terminal moraine, so it's very eclectic soils, very different on every aspect. Got to make sure we plant, smart. And we sit around 6 acres of aronia, probably about 2.5 acres of grapes, and that's a combination of the Fredonia and the Concord, and about now 2 acres of plums, which I just planted a new plum section about 3 years ago. Just maybe get into production next year or two. And I think that's about it.
Great. Thanks, Cory. All right. So our first question, and I think we're just gonna jump to this one. What have been your biggest challenges and rewards so far? So this can be in terms of a particular crop, or just in a certain aspect of your operation. And let's start with your biggest challenge so far. Um, any one of you feel free to kick us off.
Well, this is Cory again. I guess I'll chime in. I waited a second. It's challenges are all over the board, and they're getting worse. It seems, at least for where we're at down here. Insect disease, having different weather patterns moving in, marketing fresh fruit, and trying to get people to get away from this created sweet desire that everybody's after, but realizing that really healthy fruits oftentimes are more in the tart or tannin based side of it. So a lot of education to the public. But I think when it ultimately comes down to it, probably my most difficult aspect currently is finding workers to help us out here. That and the very strange weather patterns. I mean, we're getting rains, torrential when we don't want them, which have never occurred, like right at the beginning of strawberry season, and or even at the planting times, and then we're getting droughts and immense heat that is not typical, and that's changed about the last probably within the last 10 years.
I guess I can jump in. I think, kind of in a similar vein of what Cory mentioned, I think, when you compare growing, so I'm mostly growing perennial fruit other than the day neutral strawberries. You compare that to like a corn and soybean farm, and one of the things that I see is just like the variability in yield that we see from year to year, which just kind of makes it tricky where you might do all the right things and there's certain things that are out of your control. And one year you have a great year, we have a great year of blueberries, and the next year, we have some tough spring weather, we don't get great pollination, and our yield drops a third, right? Maybe we don't have a full crop loss. And so that just really, all of a sudden your expenses are basically the same, but your sales are down. And so kind of developing a farm that's diversified and hopefully the right way, that there's some balance, where one crop doesn't do as well, but another crop kind of picks it up. And we started as kind of primarily just a blueberry farm, and after 5 or 6 years, I realized like that wasn't gonna work, and so I had to sort of reimagine a crop mix that could hopefully be diversified from different kind of perils, to like have some stability to kind of ride that wave of different levels of yield each year from certain crops.
I'll hop in. Yeah, I think I can kind of mirror what Cory and Aaron were saying. It's so variable with the weather that can have such a unique challenge with any given year. And as far as like the variability with yields, I think in my experience, I think the different cultivars, it's like wildly different. And I'm sure for you guys, like I've tried to soak up as much knowledge that I could possibly soak up online. And like Montana State University will say like, oh, like this variety of honeyberries has a problem with dropping off the fruit. And then I'll talk to a grower on the East Coast and they will say like, we cannot get them off the bush. And so there's so much genetic expression going on, I think, in our own microclimates that there needs to be a lot of local research. And so I'm really glad that UW-Madison and groups like the Savannah Institute are spending a lot of time doing that, because that's like information that we just like don't have locally, where I think, with the investment in corn and soy, there's like billions of dollars of research that goes into it. That's something that we don't really have yet. So what I've been trying to do is just plant as many, like you guys, like how many cultivars can I get of one specific species, and then see how it, expresses itself. And so that's kind of been the challenge for me. And then the other thing is, okay, at least for me, like I'd like to scale so I can sell frozen, being able to cash flow enough to invest in that infrastructure so you can, someday have a commercial kitchen so that you can freeze and maybe even help out other growers. Like there's some challenges baked into those costs on crops that already you have to wait a little while until they start fruiting. So just a couple of those challenges for sure.
Ernest, any challenges that you have?
Well, I already mentioned the cedar waxwings, but in addition, the spotted wing Drosophila. So the waxwings get us at the start of the season, and the SWD gets us in the fall, later on. So, yeah.
Great. How about on the flip side? What have been your biggest rewards so far? What's worked really well for you?
Well, I think everybody's talking about diversity, and I really think that's the key to success in farming or maybe anything in life. But diversity is everything. When I first started operating this, I didn't take that as serious as I should have, but I came into a family operation. So we already had some diversity. I started tapering down in areas, but then we had major crop failures. As Aaron was saying, we can have extremely variable crops. So I think the success, for me would be really adapting and trying different things out. When you have an extra little area or you have 5 rows, I try to do, in my planting for strawberries, I try a new strawberry cultivar just to see how it'll do. But I have to do it 2 years in a row, give it a north-south aspect versus an east-west aspect, because sun exposure matters, how the rains come down and angles. I have found extreme differences in how I plant things, and paying attention to soils is a big one out here, because we have that extremely variable soils from sand to clay on the same hill. So knowing your soils, knowing the aspects, knowing the needs of of what you're planting. I mean, give an example would be plums. They are really hard to grow here in southern Wisconsin because they bloom early. So I try to find an aspect that's a northwest aspect, so I get less morning sun. Therefore, I've been able to have plums here, and they've been doing pretty good, except for those really cold winters that the air pooling goes down. Know your cold air drainage. Get intimate with your land. That is really what saved me. I mean, taking notes is a big one. Going back and reflecting on what you did. It's easy to get running and scrambling and, oh my God, I didn't make my money, but you got to go back and wonder why. And 1 year is never a good test. It has to be probably a 2 year, in my opinion, just to see how things really pan out. Because, but the successes are there. There's money to be made. Just really got to pay attention. And again, I'll say, take notes and review them often.
I would say just the customer relationships and the joy that people get from buying really amazing tasting and healthy fruit locally. So since we do U-Pick, since we sell everything at the farm, we kind of we interact with all of our customers, and just over the years have built a lot of really amazing relationships and seen them tell their friends and neighbors. And, that's a really nice feedback loop when sometimes there are lots of struggles that they don't know about. So that's been very rewarding.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has gone well for me is the layout of my planting. So one of the things I tried to do was is trying to balance things out. So I tried to make sure that there was enough space for pollinators. So we do like pollinator strips in between our blocks of fruit, and that hopefully spurs some type of beneficial insect activity. But also, like, the blocks themselves alternate, so I'll have a section of elderberries, for example. They're close enough, they're wind pollination, we're good there. And then the next block over, separated by a pollinator strip, is currants, for example. And it's one of those things where I feel a lot less stressed when I have, let's just say I see Japanese beetles, which is really common for elderberry. I don't stress out as much because I know I already picked my honeyberries for the year. The black currants did all right. If that the beetles are something that I can address in different ways, but it's I think it's really less stressful just having knowing that, like, I'm going to sell a product. It's a mix, and if I have a tougher year with one, it's okay, because my other products I might have had a better year with them. And so I think, like, if you're looking to market something, I know, like, the me selling a mix has been nice. There are some challenges with, like, the processing side, because you got to wash it, freeze it, and then combine it all later. But I feel like laying out of the planting itself and then the product itself, kind of mimicking that diversity, has been helpful. So.
So yeah, on the personal uh, level, got a text this morning from a neighbor. This photo showed up in my memories tonight. Johnny loved your honeyberries. It's her 2-year-old sitting there with his face is covered in honeyberry blood. Johnny loved your honeyberries. They were one of his most favorite foods. I would put a small dab of whipped cream on top of your frozen berries. His favorite. Johnny died 2 years ago, and it popped up on her memories, and she sent it to me today. That's how special, you know, these they make their family memories coming out to pick, and then they take them home and freeze them. But one of the things, game changers for us, especially for the honeyberries, is helping customers, pickers pick in greater quantities, because it's really time consuming to hand pick honeyberries. So the shake and drop method, and cherries, they seem to, pick. We haven't been able to shake our University of Saskatchewan cherries. We have to pick real soon before the SWD gets them, so they don't shake off the trees. We can shake currants some, but yeah, just doing some low tech, um, harvesting techniques that will help our families fill up their freezers to feed their families is also, great. Gives us gets our fruit picked, and that's a real game changer. Okay.
And if I could say one more thing, I just want to kind of echo something Aaron said and Mark said. I think Bernice as well. It's, so like Aaron was saying about relationships, and farming is community. It's not just the people you have come in. We do a U-pick. We've been 56 years. We have grandmas coming in now that used to pick for us when they were kids. But it's knowing the other neighbors and the community in your local area. I don't believe you can do this alone. We need to have the support of all the other farmers, because when equipment breaks down, you call them up and you're all friends, and you can borrow, you can, help each other out. Going back to something Mark was saying, and kind of what I was hinting at, is he was talking about the planting strategies. And one thing I would say with perennial crops like we do, we have the aronia as well, and so on. Know your harvesting equipment and how you're going to be harvesting before you plant. Otherwise, you'll be reinventing the wheel in a more difficult way later on. So think like you're playing a game of chess, think ahead a little bit about, okay, how am I going to harvest these? What kind of distance do I need between the rows and so on. But yeah, a lot of stuff to think about. But I think community, as Aaron was saying, is the key right there. It really, word of mouth will keep people coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Really important point there. Thanks everybody. So next question relates to kind of economics and profitability of the crops. Um, which crops are your most profitable and which are your least profitable and why?
Let's see. So I can jump in. So blueberries as like a long-term perennial crop are, they're really profitable, although it's sort of like if I haven't really done like I suppose a life cycle analysis, but so just as an example, right now, we've had our fields for 10-ish years, 10 to 15, depending on the fields. And we'll sell, 100 and we'll say $130,000 worth of blueberries in a year. And our expenses are probably only $20,000. That would include our staffing for doing U-pick and packaging and labor for picking, because they're well established, and pruning labor. But also, for the first 5 years you have them, uh, you're losing money. So I would say they're definitely a long-term, very profitable crop. The demand is super high. We can't grow enough really. Um, so they're really profitable. I guess I would say, and that's just kind of some rough numbers. Um, in terms of uh, I guess day neutral strawberries as like an annual fruit crop. Um, uh, Although they do require a lot of labor, they are also quite profitable because again, the demand is so high. I mean, we're selling a pound of day neutral strawberries for $10 a pound, and we're selling $70,000 with them of them. So we're selling a lot of pounds of strawberries, and because it's July and August and September when there are no other strawberries available locally, people are really willing to pay a really good price. So they have less upfront investment in the sense that you can cash flow them easier than a blueberry plant, which you're gonna you know work a whole bunch for 2 to 3, 4 years and not get any income from. I guess just in terms of least profitable, I'm kind of ruthless in the sense that I cut things out that aren't profitable. So, um, while, some of the other crops maybe aren't quite as profitable, um, they're all they're all profitable, fairly profitable, I guess. And if they didn't produce consistent yields, um, we just wouldn't grow them. Um, or if we didn't have a great market for them. So like we used to grow some elderberries. We just didn't have like the right market or the right like processing equipment to destem them, and we weren't going to grow enough of them to justify like a destemmer, and like hand destemming was too labor intensive for us, and so we stopped growing them. So that would be an example. I guess it wasn't profitable for us, although I think elderberries are profitable for other folks.
I'd say sea berries are the least profitable, just because they are so time consuming to pick, and we've had SWD get into them in late August, September. And Cory, I think your farm has had them for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had them in the test plot for about 27 years, and Yeah, it's hard to get people to enjoy them, but once they get after them, they get kind of addicted to it. But the picking is difficult. Either you prick your finger all the time, real slow little balloons exploding, or you have to trim the branches about a third of the tree and rotate around every 3 years to do that, which is also sets you back. So I'd agree with you. It's least profitable, but definitely a great product.
So have you done your pruning and frozen and shaken that way?
I have done it that way. So what I do is I sell to the restaurants those. I don't take those to market or off the farm, except for people maybe at the farmer's market that have gotten hooked. They call me directly. But I've gotten to the point of just cutting it, putting it on the sprig. I give them a little bit of a break on price, and I don't have to deal with it. Personally, I freeze it, like you're saying, shake it down, and then I put it in an immersion blender and juice it, and that's how I preserve my personal amount. Yeah. Yeah, the sea berry is definitely a difficult product because of the harvesting, I think, is probably the most difficult part of it. And just getting people to want it. Marketing and education is a tough one. That goes with any fruit that is really good for you that we all want to promote, but don't have that sweet. The blueberries are great because they're good for you and they're sweet. That's what people want. But the tart berries generally have a higher antioxidant level, a higher ORAC value. But really more difficult to sell.
Well, and that seasonal thing is a big factor for us because our local strawberry farm draws thousands of pickers in early July, first week in July, and our honeyberries we can start picking a week earlier, but it's really hard to get people to come out then because their mind is July is berry picking season. So for some reason, it's just really hard, even though we've been doing it now for over 10 years and we do get some pickers. So what we end up doing is harvesting that first week more for our own use and we freeze in 5-gallon buckets for jam makers and juice quality, jam and juice quality berries. So, and then on the other end of the spectrum in the fall, everyone's back to school in September, and we do get some school groups out in the fall, but as far as berry picking, it's not in their mind. So going with the mentality of the locality is another challenge we face. But come July, they're here.
That's a really good point. There is a psychology of when people want things. Strawberries up until about July 4th. After that, I could have the best strawberries in the world. Nobody wants them. They're moving on to something else. Then watermelon kicks in. I mean, so people have this like cyclical movement through the crops. And that's why I don't grow really late strawberries anymore because I couldn't even market them, which is weird. But it's a psychology people have.
And yet Aaron can do it all summer long, so it's very location dependent. Huh?
Yeah, I think, since we don't have the June strawberries, but I will agree with Cory. I think like our strawberry demand kind of picks up late July. Like there's kind of a break. They like get sick of the early ones and move to a different fruit crop and then kind of come back to them.
Yeah, I'll chime in here just with the question. So my least profitable is oddly enough honeyberries, I think right now. It hasn't proven to be the amount of yield that was promised by a lot of people. I haven't experienced. It could be my soils. I get soil tests. I get leaf tissue analysis. And so I'm figuring out I may need a little manganese. Is that something that I'm going to have to continue to do? So we'll see exactly and fine tune it. It could be pollination that certain varieties need to be next to each other. I mean, I've got a lot of plants out there. That would be a surprise. Or it could just be that they're younger and that, people were promising, oh, you're going to get, 5-10 pounds at year, 3 or 4. And I've just not gotten anything near that. And I
Wow.
continue to hear promises of people saying that, but I don't know. I just haven't experienced it personally. We're in my location. What has worked pretty well for me is the black currants and elderberry, just based on yield. And essentially, my product is like a mix of those four fruit in a mixed bag, and it like supercharges their smoothie, which is like true. It's a lot of antioxidants if they're used to going to the grocery store and getting frozen produce shipped from halfway across the world, and it's like local. You can't get it anywhere else. I'm essentially selling them antioxidants. And so, yeah, they can add it into their smoothies. And so that's been working really well. I think as I scale and I produce more, I'm going to need to have different types of customers. So, for example, there's a local CSA, they'll purchase really large quantities. That's probably a good place when I have a lot more production. In addition to that, some local smoothie and juicery places where they just run through a lot of produce. And so being able to supply that locally is kind of a unique way to differentiate people as well. So I'm really hoping that I can get the honeyberries kind of situation figured out. And I keep on trying different varieties. There's just kind of a lack of information locally on that. I would love to do blueberries, but my pH is so high, and I don't know if that's a battle that I want to perpetually fight. So at some point, I'd love to talk to Aaron about that. But as far as like descending, it's probably black currants and elderberry just because of their yield. Aronia is pretty high too, realistically, but it's in a blend. So even if honeyberry is a little lower right now, like I can ride that out just based on my diversity.
Mark, I think you nailed it though. It's giving people an idea of what to do with these crops. Put them in a smoothies has been a big one I've been pushing as well. And giving them ideas of how to juice stuff and constantly educating people, because a lot of people don't know what to do with seaberry, with juneberry, with cornelian cherry. I mean, what the hell are these things, right? And if we want to get people to use them and buy them and try them, we got to give them ideas of how to go that route. So I think promoting the smoothie, I've been doing a very similar thing over here, and it's been working very well. So nice job on that. Well, is it my turn? I guess. I feel like I talk a lot. Sorry. So basically, our cash crop by far is strawberries. That's our primary crop. We have a pick your own operation of about 12 acres, up to 14 at times. I have any given year about 4 acres of brand new fields. I don't do it in annual. I put them into a perennial. Obviously, in my situation, they're June bearing. But very profitable to have pick your own operations. People love to come out. It used to be, and we've been around 57 years now. It used to be, I hate to say this, but the older folks would be coming out and be like, hey, I just want to get down, get prostate to the higher berry, get them home, processed, jam jellies, done, and that's changed completely, thankfully. Now it's a family activity. We have people coming out, and I've been really, and I think I think we'd all agree that it's a family thing. We want to get more families involved in being outside, picking berries. If you keep the kids happy, the parents stay longer. So no gimmicks, but somehow keep the kids happy, keep the parents happy, educate people, go around and talk. But for us, again, strawberries is our cash crop. I make all my money in about 2.5 weeks. No stress. Everything else that we have primarily goes into stores, restaurants, and it's just to kind of keep our label out there throughout the rest of the season. Plus the diversity that Aaron was talking about. I've had a complete Aronia failure this last year as a 3 statewide loss. I mean, everybody's complaining about it, but I've never had 0 Aronia. And every farmer in my area here had, well, I think we harvested off of 2 farms about 400 pounds, which normally between both of our farms would be at 35 to 40,000 pounds. So stuff happens. So anyway, yeah, strawberries. I'll leave it there. That's my main crop.
Thanks all. We've got a couple of questions that I want to pose. So a lot of you mentioned Aronia. That seems to be a really tough berry to find a market for right now. Is there anything you do to make your Aronia more sellable?
Yes. I hijack the notoriety of elderberry and put it in a mix. So yeah, I mean, like aronia on its surface is essentially like an ingredient, but like, for all of us, like if we were making a smoothie, like, yeah, you can hide some aronia in your smoothie and it's really good for you. So that's essentially what we do, at least for my customers. They really know what elderberry is, so I have a little bit in there. Um, Again, that mixture component I think is really key to marketing, because they don't necessarily have to know like what an aronia is. You don't have that burden on your shoulders to like communicate that. It's just use what they know. And it's more of like a superfruit mix than it is anything else. And so that gives us as producers a little more flexibility. So it's just what I'm finding that works. It's very possible that in the future, there's a lot of like wineries, breweries, distilleries in the kind of touristy county that I'm in. So like at some point, like I might just hone in more on one crop because it's selling and economics. But as of right now, I love this diversity and to the field and in the product as well.
So what we've done is we sort of pair it with raspberries in terms of U picks. We grow fall raspberries for pick your own. And people love to pick raspberries, and at least our customers, since we're kind of new to growing elderberries, don't know as much about them, but they like the idea of picking a second thing while they're at the farm. So it's like they've made the trip out and they're just like interested in doing some more picking. So that's sort of how we have been able to sell all of our aronia. But I would also say, like, we just don't grow as many of them. So, we have 5 acres of blueberries. We have a half acre of aronia. And part of that is we're focused on like fresh fruit sales at the farm. So I'm not looking to grow more and to harvest and sell to processors or, distillers like Mark was talking about. So I think knowing your market and like what's your farm's focus and like who are your customers. So I don't have the brewery customers. I have just people who want to pick berries. And so sort of scaling the Aronia appropriately for like who your customers are. And then, it's sort of like what Mark said. He's sort of marrying it with elderberries. I'm sort of marrying them with raspberries. And people are interested in, picking a few and giving it a try, basically.
That's great advice. Another question that came in says, for those of you that grow honeyberries, do you pick them as soon as they color up when they're still very tart, or do you try to protect them until they sweeten up?
We always try to keep them until they sweeten up. But again, I talk to restaurants and they tell me what they want. We don't go real big. So it's that, market diversity, I think, is kind of goes back to the Aronia too. It's knowing how much you can sell fresh, knowing who you can sell it to, communicating with them, building those relationships. But to answer the question, I try to get them to sweeten up for the most part. A couple times the restaurant said we want them a little tartar. And so, yeah, but yeah, that's how we do it.
Yeah, for processing, you can pick them pretty tart and, adjust the sugar accordingly, and it still produces a great jam.
All right, let's move on to another question. So you all have pretty diversified farms. So what challenges and efficiencies have you found in working with diverse fruit crops? And that could be related to equipment, labor, marketing, anything. So yeah, how has working with diverse fruit crops sort of made your farm more efficient, or on the flip side, more challenging in some ways?
I would say that as far as like efficiencies and trying to attain them, so um, the shake and drop method works for pretty much all of the fruit that I grow except for elderberries. So if I were to get a commercial harvester at some point, not that this is, everyone's context, like you could have long rows of certain blocks of like honeyberries, currants, and aronia, and that same harvester could work on all three of those. So there is a version of this where like you have the same harvesting system for all of the three fruit, which is pretty slick. For me, my oddball out is obviously elderberry. So I need to get a destemmer. And so I feed it in, it takes the stems out. I have to continue to process it a little bit by hand, and then I have to wash it, sanitize it, freeze it. And so that part of the process is different, but it's also a different time of year. So you might find yourself finding, and this is maybe happened by happenstance, that the fruit that works for you might be at the same time. That's kind of what I'm experiencing. My best honeyberries are in July. That's also when my black currants, my favorite varieties, are fruiting. Not ideal, but I'll deal with it. But I look forward to getting that kind of bottleneck of the season done, where the elderberries and aronia are later, and I can kind of take my time if it is a slightly different growing system. But it's washing fruit, it's freezing them, and then mixing them later. So the mixing them is kind of annoying to some degree, but well worth it if I don't have to waste so much time dealing about pests and disease. So
I would say for some of these unique, lesser sought after fruits, it's the infrastructure that I think a lot of people don't think about, or you should think about definitely, such as the aronia berries. Everybody's talking about destemming things, and that's a pretty darn big deal. We've tried hand harvesting and cleaning them ourselves. That's impossible. Before you plant a lot of anything, know how you're going to deal with it. I think I brought this up a couple times though, but we wouldn't be able to do the aronia at the scale we did if there wasn't another farm that we've partnered with down the road here that has a harvester that we've helped maintain. That goes back to the relationships, or the organic washing systems that has the destemmers involved. And I'll tell you, you guys up here on the panel probably all had tried to destem everything yourselves. And I'll tell you, those are some really long, irritating days. And they never quite look the same. So the infrastructure is probably one of the bigger challenges. Irrigation for me was a huge infrastructure, and I keep adding to it. It's not cheap. Having a pond, being able to draw water, things like that have been very challenging, but also if you can put a little money into it, it's going to offer you a greater success, in my opinion.
I would just say on diversification, one of the things that I've thought a lot about when I'm thinking about what crops we're going to grow and that diversity is when the work happens for that crop, whether it not just harvest, but like key moments in the crop cycle and kind of how that affects labor. And so one of the benefits has been is like I'm trying to like create a year-round or close to year-round like job for someone so I can keep them. And if I just have one crop, there's like super busy at certain times and there's nothing to do any other time. Whereas like with a diversity of crops and like different things happening at different times, kind of like can fill the calendar for a person and for kind of labor to sort of like make it a little bit easier to like do staffing versus like I need 20 people in July and like I can do the rest myself. Well, that could be, I mean, that's another way to do it. You could hire temporary people or something like that. But so it can be helpful in terms of like labor and kind of balancing out needs. I'd also say for diversifying, we started as a blueberry farm. We had this large captive customer base that we developed just based on one crop. It made it a lot easier to sell the other crops when we added them because we already had the customers. So we could just say, now all of a sudden we have something that you can come to do in August or something to buy. And so it does allows us to engage our customers for a longer period of time throughout the season. So instead of necessarily needing more customers, we just hopefully offer more things to the customers we have.
Ernest, do you have any thoughts on that? Challenges or efficiencies in working with diverse fruit crops?
Well, you guys are saying it well.
Cool. We do have a few questions that have come in the chat. One is, have any of you explored savory value-added uses like barbecue sauces, salsas, chutneys, etc., especially for the lower sweetness fruits? That could be like value-added, doing the value-added yourself or selling to a business that produces value-added products.
We have tried multiple things over the years. My father as well, with the Aronia was a big one he was pushing. We've tried it in yogurts, worked with whatever Nature Valley or whatever it is, and other places putting it in breads. I reached out to Bob's Bitchin' Barbecue, met up with him a couple years ago. He was going to make an awesome Aronia barbecue sauce, and something always seems to come up. But I think value added for some of these tertiary crops that's where the money is going to be. So product development, I'm in the process of trying to create apple aronia sauce. It's a wonderful deal there. I want to take over for cranberries if I can, but we had a failure last year, so that set me back about 2 years on that project. But yeah, getting it out there and trying to get it into products, I think, is key. We do most of what we do fresh fruits, which I'll tell you is not an easy thing to do because it's sensitive, it's fast, and then you're done. So, yeah.
So my tip for the day, make an apple crisp and throw some berries in. And it can be anything. Aronia bakes up, the baking depletes that astringency. Honeyberries, just a very few honeyberries it'll give it a zip, and so easy because a lot of people know how to make apple crisps. And yeah, pairing things with apples is a very good idea to introduce berries.
Excellent. All right. So, seeing as how we only have 8 minutes left, I want to shift gears to be a little more forward-looking. So, how do each of you see your operation changing in the future? Maybe to deal with some of the challenges that you're seeing, or some of the parts of it that are going really well.
I've noticed that as the weather's been changing, I've been evolving what the types of strawberries I'm planting. So every year I'm planting more test strips, if you will. And I think trying to get ahead of it, really trying to diversify even what I already am growing. And it sounds a little silly, but you know what you got, you know what's working. But to give an example, I grow a Cavendish strawberry. It's a Canadian berry. It likes it cool. But when it gets hot like it's been, it doesn't fully ripen. I mean, it's ripe, but it's white on one side, red on the other side because it's Canadian. It wants that cool weather. But then you go to things like, Jewel, and that has inherent issues in itself that just randomly happen every fourth year. But trying different things and trying to evolve what my main uh, strawberry varieties would be. I'm moving more towards Honeyberry, which I'm not sorry, not Honeyberry. I can't think of it right now, but it's one that hasn't been a real popular one in the past, but it seems to be doing amazing in this new climate we're having. So that's what we're doing, is just trying to stay ahead of it by planting new, trial areas and seeing how they do.
Is it Corey? I'm just wondering, is it black currant that you're trying to think of?
No,
No,
God, I'm totally drawn. I'm having a
that's okay.
moment. If it comes to me, I'll let you know. But it's
Okay.
it's one of the berries it's really prolific. It's a strawberry. Um,
Oh,
just having a moment. No, I'll let you know if I come up with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in the future, I just want to, if I could go back in time and say like, okay, if I were to do things differently, I think the challenge with not having data is that you kind of have to create your own. So, trying to test out, and I know like in a lot of your farms, it sounds like we're all just like specifically testing out a lot of the different varieties. I wish I knew which ones were really successful and which ones weren't. and then, planting more of those, obviously. But having that data now into the future, I know that I can scale certain varieties, and I feel good making that investment. And but I do think that it takes that testing on your own site in order to feel good about that. So yeah, as far as the future, I still want to lean into that diversification. It's weird because, like, in my context, I'm kind of using this kind of perennial kind of agroforestry type systems, and I'm using it as a tool for the land because it's more of a conservation, a profitable form of conservation on the land, and not so much like I want, you pick farm. I want to just do something that'll replace a more polluting situation because of surface water issues. So yeah, just kind of using a lot of the successes that I've had and piggybacking off of that.
So we've been around for, 15 years, and I think I just bring that up because it's like where sort of the cycle of development is our farm, right? We're not just kind of in the startup phase. We've kind of tested a lot of things, different varieties we've gotten rid of. We've tried different crops and sorted them out, and we've kind of got our crop mix now, though we're still experimenting always, with cherries and grapes, but we kind of have, the strawberries and the raspberries and the blueberries. And so, you know, we still have about 5 acres of land that we can plant on, so that of what we own at the moment. And so it's kind of slowly filling that and growing a little bit within the context of the infrastructure that we already have. So like I don't want to trigger, now I need to make a huge investment in irrigation or a huge investment in tractors. So how can we kind of grow within the infrastructure and land base that we have? And something that I think a lot about it just at our size is like having a couple key employees and being able to pay them well enough to keep them, because I can't do it all myself anymore. And so it's a little bit of transitioning of um, not just a owner, sort of run farm, but a owner with some other managers kind of scale after we've been doing it for a while, to kind of have sort of maybe more long-term sustainability, and not have to avoid burnout that you hear from like a lot of other farmers sometimes.
Well, I see a lot of comments out there and everybody's picking on me. Yes, it was honey eye. It was honey eye I was thinking of. The other thing I would say too is integrated pest management. It's going to save you a ton of time and money if you can implement good IPM techniques, less inputs and things like that. Even grass strips every 10 rows is what I do, and that saves me a ton of problems. If I ever need to spray, I can just do an edge of my field that kind of stops things. So, but you were right. Honey eye was what I was trying to say. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, we have 1 minute left, and there's a question that popped up that should be quick, so I'll just ask it. Have any of you tried kiwi berries on your farm? And if so, any lessons learned?
Oh, yes, they're delicious, but you have to wait a long time for them. Yeah, we had to wait like 4 or 5 years. And yeah, they're delicious. And you have to, I guess the pro of the weather change is we haven't had late frosts. And so, yeah, in the early years, we get late frosts that would zap the leaves, and then it didn't kill the plants, but they didn't really grow very well that year. So that's a bonus.
I've tried kiwi here in southern Minnesota, and an initial problem that I had was getting bad advice from some of the sellers. Uh, Here, we need to have Actinidia colomicta, and it's the Arctic version. And even though another version will survive, if it gets like 20 below or 15 below Fahrenheit, it'll make it sterile. Actinidia colomicta is the one that will not go sterile until like 40 below. So it's really important to get that right. And the University of Minnesota on their extension site has a lot of great kiwi berry information, and that saved me. It saved me from ordering the wrong stuff, and also to protect it in the spring is really important as far as to keep it from emerging too fast. So those are my 2 bits of advice.
Great, thanks, Clinton, for that. So we are just after 1 o'clock. So I wanted to wrap it up just by thanking the panelists so much for being here and sharing all your collective experience. You guys are amazing growers. This is recorded, and we'll post the recording on our YouTube channel, I would say in the next few days, and send that out to everybody who's registered. So you'll get a chance to rewatch it if you want. I think that's all I have. Any final words, Anne, or from any of the panelists, real quick?
I would like to just say, if anybody's interested in some of these unusual fruit crops, we had a test area going for almost 30 years. And if you get on our website, carandalefarm.com, look under farm research, it goes to Center of Integrated Ag, CIAS website, has a ton of great information of those 30 years of what we grew, how they did, and so on. And feel free to follow up if you'd like.
And we're going to be sending out a follow-up email probably next week with a link to the webinar, and also any sort of resources that our farmers want to share with us. We can put their website addresses in, things like that, so you can reach out to them directly if you'd like to tour their farms or talk to them a little bit more about what they do.
Excellent. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for joining, and thanks again to our grower panelists. Take care.